Hey everybody, welcome to Garden Sound 365. My name is Garden Sound. This is the show where we write music every day for a year. We're going to go ahead and jump right into it and pick up right where I left off. I was talking about mixing yesterday. I was mixing a house track, and today we're going to talk about mastering that house track. Okay, so now I've got my mastering template opened. Now this is important. I've saved the template that I use to master all of my tracks. The reason I did this is because it's faster to save a template file, like just doing a save as on a file that you've used to master something before, than just replacing your audio file. It's faster. Two, it makes all of my tracks sound the same in terms of their relative loudnesses. So if you play an album of my stuff, you don't have to worry about turning the volume up and down between my tracks, unless one of them is significantly softer than the others. So this is my favorite way to do mastering. I've saved a template that works for me. I've used it over 100 times. It works great for me. So I'll talk about that now. Now, mastering is a buzzword, a big buzzword. You should definitely focus harder on your mix down than you do on the mastering section, okay? So focus more on making your mixes solid, and the mastering will follow. You can only master something as good as the mix is. If the mix sucks, mastering's not going to help it very much. So we've got Aw Yeah, right? And so what I'm going to do is just drag Aw Yeah, the file I just exported, into this project. Okay, so this is the export from earlier. So I'm going to grab my loop braces and I'm going to go to that same section I was just listening to right here, okay? Now before I press play, you'll notice down here on the bottom there are a number of plugins on this track, right? There's a number of things that I've put in that are going to make this track sound a certain way, okay? These are all effects from Ableton, all default effects from Ableton, and they all go on the audio track that we brought in, the export. They don't go on the master track. We're using the master track to check our levels. We're not using the master track to actually we're not putting any effects on the master, okay? These are all part of Aw Yeah. You can tell because I'm clicking between the Aw Yeah and the master in session view, and you can see here. It's clip view, isn't it? Yeah, it's clip view. Oh my God. Clip view. You can see that they're not on the master, they're on the track. Why am I going through all the trouble of telling you that? Because that's the only way you can accurately test your overall dB. Okay, so we're going to go over that now. So I'm going to press all of these off, and I'm going to go over one by one, bring them in slowly, and tell you what they do. Okay. This is our exported audio file. All right. It sounds just like it did a minute ago, and it should. It should sound identical to how it sounded a minute ago. Alright, so let's start from left to right. This EQ8. What it does is it clips off the very bottom frequencies that our ears can't hear, right? So it starts at 30 hertz, right? That's the cutoff on the bottom end. And at the very top, our peak there is 16 kilohertz. We can't really hear much past 16 kilohertz. Now, this is the same frequency range that was used in traditional audio mastering on vinyl records. So this actually is going to make things sound a little bit more analog in terms of sounding like vinyl than it would be if I didn't have this particular EQ in there. That's the only purpose of this EQ. The only reason I have it in there is to make this sound more analog and a little bit older, okay? If that's not your style, if you don't like the way that sounds, don't use this, okay? This is a total like stylistic preference on my part. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is turn on this glue compressor here. Now, not to make myself sound like Carnage, but what this does is it makes things more louder. That's really all it does. And all we're trying to do here is just bring it up to a level that's normal, right? We're trying to bring this up to a normal level. So I've got this particular volume knob, which is my control room, and I know that if I set it at 9 o'clock, that is the point at which most audio files I listen to, you know, like most tracks, like a Dead Mouse track, or if I was listening to, like, you know, Bass Nectar or Scream or you know, any EDM track, At 9 o'clock, that sounds pretty good on my speakers. So I'm trying to make my loudness the same as those tracks, okay? I particularly focus on deadmau5 because he does good dynamic mixing and doesn't just brick wall compress everything. And that's not what I'm doing here. This is not brick wall compression, that's totally different. But what I am doing here is dynamically compressing this track to make it louder. Because right now, it's not at a level. We're hitting -7 dB. We're not even hitting standard, which would be around -1 to about 0, okay? So we're gonna bring this up until we get close to about -1. That's pretty good. That's pretty dang good. All right, so we're up to -0.9. That's about as close as I can get right now. So we're gonna call that good. The next thing I'm gonna do is ignore this overdrive. I would use this plugin if I had an electric bass, but what that's designed to do is round off the lower frequencies. Since this is an electronic track and my bass is a synthesizer, it's already been done for me by the processors of the synthesizer. I don't have to worry about this. So I'm gonna leave this particular effect off. This particular plugin is called Warm Up the Highs. It does that. It's just a saturator. Alright, so this is going to probably make my signal on the master go a little bit above 0. That's okay. I'll get to that in a minute. Okay. We're getting up to +0.93. Now, that's not even close to being in the red in terms of digital mixing. You can go all the way to +6 dB before things start to sound like bullshit. So 0.9 above is perfectly fine. Besides, in a minute, I'm going to show you how we're going to clip all that top stuff off anyway with a little bit of limiting, and that's necessary for internet. And so we'll get there. So we got Warm Up the Highs. Now this is going to make the highs sound a little bit better, and it totally did. It makes those highs sound crisp. The next thing I'm going to do is bring in an EQ8 that has mid-side EQ, meaning it's going to spread things out. And this is a stereo widening effect. So I'm going to turn that on now, and it's going to make things a little bit wider. Now it totally did. Now, here's the thing. You're not going to be able to hear it very well over the microphone, but you'll have to take my word on it. Alright, so now that we've gotten to this particular level, the next thing I'm going to do is turn on a limiter. And that's just going to chop off any frequency that goes above -0.3. The reason I'm doing that is because internet compression is such that when you listen back to a stream, anything that's at 0 or above gets chopped off anyway. So by bringing it down just those 0.3 decibels, what I'm doing is making my mixes sound dynamic over the internet. If you're listening back to it over the internet, which is where the majority of my streams come from. Now, for the masters that I'm sending to the production facility, the reproduction facility, it's gonna burn these onto a CD. I'm gonna leave that limiter off. This is only gonna be on digital download or anywhere it's streamable. That's what this limiter is going to be on. I don't turn this limiter on if I'm sending it off to any sort of analog or even high quality digital production facilities, because I mean, for instance, if I was mixing this down onto tape, or if this was going on to an analog medium, I would turn that limiter off, and in fact I would crank up my compression a little bit higher to shoot for maybe between 3 and 2 decibels over 0. You don't want to go near the limit. You don't want to go near 6. You don't want to master and mix into the red. That's where the noise and the bad kind of crackling comes from, if you're experiencing any of that in your track. Also, if you're experiencing an effect in your track that I call brick walling, meaning that your compression is too high and your limiter is reducing things too much, you're going to get a very noisy sounding track. And you can hear that in a lot of dubstep from around 2011, 2012. That was back before people started mixing dubstep a little bit more dynamically. They still don't. Yeah. If you want examples of great dynamic mixing, go listen to Tipper and go listen to Blue Tech and go listen to Mr. Bill. Their mastering and mixing is bar none the best in electronic music. It is so clean and it is so dynamically mixed. And when I say dynamic, I mean there's a big disparity between loud and soft, right? So there you go. I hope this was helpful. I'm going to be making a song today, as I always do. So that's in the description below. But as usual, my name's Garden Sound. Have a nice day, and I'll see you tomorrow.